Hey there, my name is Cassie Gary, and this is my critical reflection number three, I suppose it is at this point. So I'm just going to start out with my article that I found. It is called How Important is Teaching Literacy in All Content Areas, which is something that we've been talking about for 2 weeks at this point in this class. I found this article on Edutopia, which I found on Academia, and it is written by Rebecca Alber. So basically, this article kind of gives ways for you to incorporate literacy throughout the classroom, which I personally really like because I feel like oftentimes I'm thrown this information and I'm suggested these things to do in my classroom, but I find a really hard time with the how. So anytime I can find any sort of article or anything, any video, article, reading, text, whatever, to tell me how to do something, I feel like I just get a better grip on it. I feel like I understand it better. And it just makes it seem more real, like something I can actually do. So basically, this article separates it up into speaking, writing, and reading as ways to incorporate literacy into any sort of subject area. I will be teaching kindergarten in the fall, hopefully face to face, but nonetheless, kindergarten, and I will be responsible for all subject areas. So I found this article helpful as well because it gave ways to do these to incorporate literacy in all of the content areas. So starting off with speaking, it shares ideas for literacy. So things like think, pair, share, elbow partner, shoulder shares, just this idea that kids need to be talking and not just sitting in their seats. It also, so this wouldn't necessarily work for me, but for more of the older grades, it lists Socratic seminars and how these things can be very impactful in our classrooms. Of course, it's something that you have to model a lot of times and practice with your students a lot of times before it becomes something you can do 100%. It takes practice. But I think those are really good things to do. So for writing, it basically says, that students write all the time, but it doesn't necessarily have to be these formal writings every single time that we do them. It shares ideas like graffiti conversations, quick writes, jots, 1-minute essays, just things that it doesn't have to be, all right, sit and write for 45 minutes. Let's take 15 seconds to jot your idea, take 15 seconds to draw this idea, and we'll come back together with it, which I really liked, especially for kindergarten, the graffiti conversation where a student can draw what they're thinking about whatever we've done to be able to share. Lastly, this article mentions reading and how reading doesn't have to always be open a book and read it. We can preview text in reading. We can talk about the purpose that we're reading a book for. We can make predictions and connections and just all these different think aloud activities that we can do with books, graphic organizers, to incorporate reading into the classroom. And it also, it makes the point that classroom libraries are very important. And just for example, just because you're a science teacher doesn't mean you just have to have science books in your classroom. While, it makes, you want science-based books in your classroom, really just more of a nonfiction selection overall for your classroom. Just don't stray away from this notion. Don't tend to come to this mindset that I teach science, I only have to have science books in my library, because that's not true. And filling your classroom library with books that are going to pique your students' interest will just help this speaking, writing, and reading thing come to life. Connecting that to the text I have right here, so I apologize for me looking down. I've just made notes. I found this chapter also very helpful. I read this before I read my article, so this was kind of here's what to do. And this article that I found gave me more of ways to do it, which I really appreciated. So it talks several times about, let me see where I've got it written down. Let's see. Sorry. So here's a quote I've highlighted. In order to foster students' comprehension, teachers must become skilled at asking questions and know what questions to ask and how to ask them. So we can't just necessarily give students text and just throw random questions at them. They need to be strategically asked. Unfamiliar text structures coupled with complex text can be very challenging for readers, and oftentimes will basically just discourage them from doing the reading, which that's not really anything that we're unfamiliar with. So as technology becomes increasingly available online, and as technology enables students to carry a computer around, it also becomes important for our students to be familiar with these online accesses and how to just incorporate that sort of literacy into our classroom. We can't just always hand a child a computer and assume they know what to do. While some of them will, in the world that we live in, not all of them will. So that was a pretty good point. So what else did I see there? Sorry, I guess I should have put sticky notes in here, but I didn't. So basically, it was just kind of, like I said, it just kind of talked about all of these things that we can do for our students. And it was really about like the reading to learn aspect of reading and literacy, and just how for us teachers to do that. So like asking questions at the right time, what kinds of questions, what to do in each like specific content area. There was a breakdown for each of those, and like I said, I'll be teaching all content areas, so that should be fun. I'm trying to see if there was anything else that I really wanted to throw on here. Text structures, teaching text structures. Children do not just they're not just born with this innate ability to read a textbook or to read a book in general. So we have to teach them different text structures and how different stories are read. And how we read different texts according to that content area. So how we read a social studies book is not necessarily going to be the same way we read a narrative in reading. So just kind of like breaking that down for our students. And that's something we have to teach them. We have to teach them how to read these different kinds of books and how to look at these different types of books and what to do with the information in these different types of books or text or PDFs, whatever we find. So I feel like after putting all of this together, I'm just kind of, I guess, word vomiting here and looking for some direction. I feel very concerned about doing this in my own classroom. It's definitely a worry that I have incorporating literacy in all of my content areas, just because it's not a normal thing. It's definitely something that I'm going to have to put more like conscious effort into, because it's not something up until this point that I have put conscious effort into. So I'm just interested. That's something that I definitely want to do moving forward when it comes to me like creating lesson plans for, not even for my kinder babies yet, but like my other master's classes. Just being conscious and aware of this aspect of literacy, and that it doesn't, literacy, like I've said in several of my discussion posts at this point, I kind of had it constricted in my mind that literacy was just in reading and writing, and I have since completely diminished that mindset. And so basically, just now that I've got it diminished, bringing that to life and putting that in my lesson plans, and just kind of figuring out, getting the reins on that and figuring out how to do it. So I'm excited to do that. I'm nervous to do it, but I'm excited because I know that it's going to make not only me a better teacher, but my students just better students from moving forward. So, yes, that is all I have for this critical response. I forget how fast time goes when I get over here and start rambling. So I apologize for this long video, but I just felt like I had a lot to share, and I'm really enjoying everything that I'm learning and reading in this class. So thank you so much.